Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is your host Molana Mahmud on the Aqsa show on Radio Ramadan Wolverhampton 87.8 FM. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. The last time we spoke, or last time we were on the show, we were very, very blessed to be in the Holy Lands where we hosted the show actually from the Dome of the Rock. So right at the center of Masjid al-Aqsa is the Dome of the Rock. And Alhamdulillah, I think very rare we could say Radio Ramadan or any radio show was hosted from Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, from the center of Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. Alhamdulillah, we had the pleasure of hosting the show and speaking to many, many, many brothers. Subhanallah, many brothers that came on the show, many of the guests that came on the show. They spoke about the beauty of Masjid al-Aqsa. They spoke about the safety of Masjid al-Aqsa. They spoke about how easy it is to travel. Now I'm going to pause here when I say easy and it's safe. It is easy, it is safe, but there is also the element of harassing. Now once you're in Masjid al-Aqsa, you sort of forget about all the harassments. You forget about all the long queue. So we had to wait in the airport, subhanallah, for over 10 hours. After 10 hours, we were let go, but 3 or 4 members of our group weren't let go, and we decided to leave them and jump on the coach because it's been 10 hours, and alhamdulillah, within another hour or so, they let the rest of the brothers go. So there was 45 of us initially, and unfortunately, 2 were rejected. 2 were rejected, and the rest of the 43 brothers we sort of made it, alhamdulillah, back in Masjid al-Aqsa. 2 of the brothers, they were interrogated in the airport. Out of 45 of us, only 2 of them were called in. And if they call you in, they look for excuses to send you back. And it's totally up to the individual who's questioning you. So there's no state policy, anything like that. This is what constitutes a security threat. If the guy's having a bad day and he says, you know what, I don't feel like this guy should be here, then subhanallah, they'll send you back. And sometimes, not all the time, rare cases, they do go through your phone, and they do go through your phone. They'll search for different key phrases. They look for Palestinian numbers, and the main thing they'll see if you're vocal about the state of Israel, if you speak against them in terms of going to protest demonstrations, you send tweets, you forward messages in against them, then for them that is a security threat. But a lot of people, what they do is they just delete those posts as they go along, subhanallah, and it is absolutely fine. But once you're in the blessed city, subhanallah, and you cross over from all the hardship of the airport and all the anxiety in the airport, then once you come into the blessed masjid and you just enter the masjid, you forget every single hardship that you've gone through. And most likely you're jet lagged, you haven't slept, because if you've got those weird early morning flights, then most likely you haven't slept the night before. And then the whole day you've been in the airport, which you haven't slept for 2 days, you haven't slept. And then you come Fajr Salah time into the masjid, or Zuhur Salah, depends, and you enter the masjid despite being jet lagged, despite traveling thousands of miles, despite having no sleep for 2 days. The moment you enter Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, you forget every single thing. You forget all the hardship that you've gone through. You forget all the effort and all the restriction and all the barriers that overcame, all the anxiety, all the stress, everything just washes away when you enter the Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. And it's such a beauty. And if someone asks, how is it? It's just a simple process. Maybe an hour or 2. You're forgetting that it was over 10 hours, 11 hours in the airport. It's not all the case all the time. This is the first time, excuse me, this is the first time in 10 years or over 10 years, subhanallah, that I've traveled. We had to stay in the airport for that long. Normally it's about 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours max. But this time there was a large volume of Muslims that came in the same flight. I think two, three flights landed, and all of them happened to be Muslims. And Allah knows why they kept us for that long. But this was the longest that we've ever been kept. There was also a doctor that traveled with another group. He's a local surgeon, a top surgeon from Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And when I saw him at the airport in Luton, I was thinking, what, mashallah, is very, the people are very lucky to have him. Then a thought crept in my heart, thinking, he's a surgeon. Will they let him enter into Palestine? Because they will know that if he's a surgeon, he might go into hospitals, he might train them up, even though he's just for a week and he's going with a tour group on a tour. He might just benefit the people in the hospital, the doctors in the hospital, and share his expertise and teach, pass some of the knowledge down. I was thinking, that's a high risk for them. They don't want anyone like that, someone that will be able to benefit the people. And subhanallah, when we went there, they found out he's a doctor. They detained him, and then on top of that, it was him and his daughter that went. They gave the daughter the visa, but they sort of haven't given the father the visa yet, the doctor. And then they found that the doctor was in Gaza helping people in humanitarian aid, and definitely they found that as a security threat. Subhanallah, for helping people, they look at you as a security threat, especially if you're a doctor. Then it's a no-go, definitely. And then they rejected him. They detained him, and Allah knows what happened to him. All we know that most likely was sent back. Didn't manage to get in contact with him. And two of our friends that were there, they did say that they saw him, catch a flight, the next flight. I think they had to book it themselves. They had to pay for it themselves, and they had to go back to the UK. And then you have a 5-year ban. Excuse me. You have a 5-year ban that you cannot enter the country. But for those that made it, alhamdulillah, there's a lot of South Africans, subhanallah, because of the arrest warrants. A lot of the South Africans brothers and sisters were getting rejected for no apparent reason. And because they come in, mashallah, the South Africans, the love for Masjid Al-Aqsa that they have is something else. And for us, it's not too expensive for us to travel from UK. It's a 5-hour flight, and most likely it's a direct flight with EasyJet. Some people taking direct flights through Berlin, Brussels, and different European countries. Some even come through Jordan. But nevertheless, it's not too expensive flight-wise. It depends when you book it, £350 all the way till £600. Depends all when you book it. Then you've got your hotel costs, so forth. But for the South Africans, subhanallah, they come from the bottom of Africa. They have to travel all across the continent of Africa, which is huge. Hours of flight. Then they transit to another. There's no direct flight. If they go to Istanbul, then they definitely spend about 10 hours or so traveling all the way to Istanbul. Then they have Allah knows how many hour layover, or whichever country they decide to stop, they'll have a layover in that country. Then they go another 3-4 hours flight all the way back into Tel Aviv. So they have, subhanallah, flight of 16, 17, 18 hours, including transit, sometimes longer, it depends. And it's not cheap flying that distance. It's not like a budget airline you could fly with. They have to fly with the legacy airline, and it's very, very expensive. And they pay for all that, and then they pay for the hotel expenses and food and so forth and so forth. So theirs works out. For us, I think, subhanallah, within £1,000, a person easily, comfortably could go with spending money sometimes. And £1,000 does a trick. Sometimes 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, depends when you book it. But for the South Africans, I just could imagine it's over £2,000-3,000 just for one person to come. And they come with the entire family. And sometimes they only come for 4 days, 5 days, and 2 whole days goes into traveling. And sometimes 2.5 days, 3 days just goes in traveling. And then they just come for 4 days, 3 days, and they go back. So for someone to do something like that, travel that distance, travel in that hardship, travel knowing that they might get rejected, that discomfort that they're going through, the hardship that they're going through, the anxiety that they're going through. Subhanallah, they only go for one thing, the love of Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. And they come in their droves. The love that they have, the the wanting for Masjid al-Aqsa, to populating Masjid al-Aqsa, is something else. So when the South African brothers go, subhanallah, it's a different feeling. And there's another benefit to it as well, subhanallah. When the South Africans come, especially at the airport, the Brits are, alhamdulillah, they're generous as they are at the time of iftar. They bring, because we know we're going to be breaking our iftar in the airport. Doesn't matter what time we land, early in the morning or whatever time. We're going to be there for a while, so we sort of prepare our iftar and go. We take our sandwiches and the usual stuff. When the South Africans come, mashallah, they love the food, and they bring the food with them as if that there's no food left in anywhere else in the world. They bring the samosas, pakoras, spring rolls, the name, and all these African dishes, name it, and they bring it. And then when the time of iftar comes, faddalu, faddalu, ya shabab, they call everyone over. You remember this, you're in an airport, international terminal, international airport. There's passport control, border control. You're at the border control. And there's a small section where they sort of, once you arrive, they take your passports off you, and they tell all the Muslims, you go and sit in that corner. And it's a corner probably made for 15, 20 people, and there are probably about 200-300 people sitting there. And you can imagine how squashed it is. So we sort of take over the terminal, and then we on the floor, people are putting the dastakhan out. The South African brothers are always prepared. They've got the dastakhan rolls as well, and they put the dastakhan rolls out. Sit down brothers, and the British brothers will come. They've got their own small stuff, and they try to pack much as they can, but nothing like the South Africans. And then the iftar starts. It's like a communal iftar at an airport, subhanallah. And this sort of really irritates the border officers, the officials, seeing the Muslims united, seeing them smiling, seeing them sharing each other, and they think, how do they know these people? Like, we've never met these brothers in our lives. This is the first time any one of us are seeing each other, and we know, alhamdulillah, the brotherhood of Islam, the love of Islam spreads, and you could see it definitely then that we're ummatun wahida, we are one nation, that all of us are just one. And subhanallah, you feel the love, and it's like when you go for Hajj and everyone's in ihram, or Umrah when everyone's in ihram, everyone's equal. You have the very same feeling at the time down there. Everyone, the brothers, the sisters are sitting in that corner. We try and share the food with them, and they're going through equally same hardship as us. And subhanallah, then we put the sufras out, the dastakhan out, and we're breaking iftar international terminal, and there's flights landing, and there's people coming from all over the world, seeing a bunch of Muslims, 200-300 Muslims, or 50, 60, 70, 80, depends on what the time and who's there, all sitting there eating. There's a group praying the salah there, the reciters are reciting beautifully. Before, we used to get the loud reciters who could got loud voice, beautiful voice to recite loudly. But now what they do is those ones, they target them. Subhanallah, anything that shows the beauty of Islam, they get targeted. So the reciters that would recite the Quran loudly and beautifully, they would target them. So then now we have to be of not get nice reciters, but not as loud as we before we would love to. Otherwise, that person would be most likely sent back. So subhanallah, you break your fast there, and it's just beautiful, despite knowing that some people's getting interrogated, some people's getting questioned. They're coming, they're asking for you, they've got your passport photocopy, they're asking for your name, your email address, your dad's name, your granddad's name, and if you know your great granddad's names, and who do you know, how do you know, and there's all these weird questions that they ask. And then eventually, when they give you a visa pass, then alhamdulillah, it's just like sometimes I joke around, we're waiting for them just to give us, it's like the news in the day of judgment, the angels coming and giving the books of deeds in our right hand, and then we like showing off and saying, I got my books of deed on my right hand. I got my books of deed on my right hand, and we super excited. And I go, it's like the feeling like that, subhanallah, when they come and they give you a passport with your visa in it, and then you're showing to everyone, Alhamdulillah, I got my visa, Alhamdulillah, I got my visa. So subhanallah, it's just an amazing feeling. So then once you get into your hotel, freshen up, and you go to Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, and you see the beauty, you know, it is something else. One of the things we had a lot of youngsters going with us this time. There was a large group of us, and alhamdulillah, majority of them were young kids, under 20, under the age of 25. We had a nephew of ours going, mashallah. He's become of our nephew now. He's 11 years old, year 7. He's 11 years old, petite, small child, alhamdulillah. He was the youngest from our group, and he also went. And one of the things that they were saying, they're not, you know, you teenagers are a bit awkward at times. Subhanallah. They don't really, they're in a digital world, so they don't really communicate on a social level. But when they were Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, it was shocking to, you know, see the love that they got from the locals, and they were overwhelmed with the love that they're receiving. And they go, you know what, we were just sitting there talking to people, and that's something that's very rare for us to do. We don't go up to people and talk. It's just weird. And here we just naturally bumping into people. We don't understand a word they're saying. They don't understand a word we're saying. We ask them, we say, Assalamu alaikum. And they say, Wa alaikum salam. And that becomes a curiosity for the brothers in Palestine, and thinking, you know, mashallah, youngsters. And they ask, Min Wain, where are you from? And they don't understand any of this stuff. So they don't understand. They sort of think, you know, they ask me that question, where am I from? So they go, we're from Min Britannia, or I'm from the UK in English, or I'm from Britain. And then the Palestinian, you know, will start conversation, ahlan wa sahlan, become, well, you know, welcome, welcome. And then the brother will say, how are you? And then and that's it, the conversation just starts, not knowing if they're responding to the actual question, because the Palestinian brother speaking Arabic, not understanding a word, and the British not understanding a word that they're saying, but they're having a full-on conversation. They're having a laugh, they're having a joke, and these are young kids, subhanAllah. We're not talking about adults that, you know, used to talking and socializing and, you know, chatting away, having a cup of tea. No, these are young kids, subhanAllah, talking to adults, talking to youngsters, talking to the shabab, the youth. And they're just sitting there walking, and they're just talking to the locals. And one of the things they say is, subhanAllah, that the love that we're receiving, is something that we've never witnessed before. We've never witnessed before that the love that we're receiving from the locals, you know, we're not understanding a word that they're saying, but we feel that these are our brothers and sisters, and they are treating us as such. And subhanAllah, that was an experience for the youngsters. Like, we experience this all the time. And one of the things that the locals, especially in Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, when you go in and you speak to the locals, and despite if you understand them or not, you know, some speak broken English, some speak, you know, good English, because if they're in the masjid area, because of the lot of foreigners that they have, they end up picking up quite good English because they interact with a lot of foreigners. But there are some that will come from the West Bank, that this is the first time in 30 years, 20 years that they're coming here. So you know, the whole family comes, like a whole day out. And one of the things that you will see from them is, you know, we don't want your money. We don't want any sadaqah. We don't want any zakat. We just want you to visit Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. That's the only request that we'll have. Go into the world, big wide world. Wherever you go, tell people to come Masjid al-Aqsa. That's the only message that they will have. They say, even if you go to the merchants, the shopkeepers, they would say, look, we want visitors for Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. And if that happens, the rest will happen. There will be no need for people to come and donate. There will be no need for people to come and give zakat, because the economy will flourish. The people will be there. They'll be buying from the merchants, who will be able to support the family, hire workers, and everyone will have jobs. And there will be very, very little people that will be in need of this hardship. But if we don't populate Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak, then there'll be no one there. The Jews will come in, the Yahuds will come in, the Israelis will come in, and that will cause a big issue because the masjid belongs to the Muslim and it's under the Muslim control. But all the entrances is guarded and not protected, but guarded and by the Israeli army, and they allow who they want to go in. But inshallah, we'll talk about the experience of entering the masjid under restriction after the break. But nevertheless, the locals want foreigners to come. And in Ramadan, alhamdulillah, it is okay in terms of people, but from the years that we have been going, subhanallah, every year seems to get less and less and less. Normally, you'll get hundreds of thousands of people. Now you're just getting 80,000, 90,000, 100,000. Before we'd be 200, 300,000. And Laylatul Qadr, 400,000. And I think one year in Laylatul Qadr, there was no space. The masjid was at full occupancy. So about 500,000 people were there. But now it's 80,000, 90,000. So compared to those numbers, it is quite less, significantly less. And the only thing they want is, look, come and visit Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. In Ramadan, alhamdulillah, okay, we get permission from West Bank and foreigners do come. But out of Ramadan, and hardly anyone gets any permission from the West Bank to come. The people in Jerusalem that live near around the masjid is heavily restricted for them. Only a certain age group, I think 50 plus or whatever policy that they have for the day, only they could enter the masjid. And anyone underneath those ages, they will need some sort of permit. They will have a ban on them because they did this. So they've got a 6 months ban, 2 months ban, 3 months ban, and they will not be allowed to enter Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak. And so in Ramadan, it's okay, but out of Ramadan, subhanallah, it is very, very empty. If the masjid takes 500,000 people as a capacity, and there's 300 people in the masjid, can you imagine how empty that masjid is? And subhanallah, it becomes absolutely quiet. And the imam brings the saf. Sometimes the imam's saf is brought halfway into the masjid, the building of Masjid al-Qibli, because to walk all to the front, there's no one there. And imagine iqamah's going on and someone just entered the building, then they've got another 2 minutes walk to go right at the front. So what they do is they bring the imam's musalla halfway into the masjid and they lead the salah there. So the top half of the masjid is empty and the bottom half is where they make the sufra and the sisters, and the ladies section is at the back. So that's one place, subhanallah, that for the sisters as well. It is when you go to the other masajids, they do have a bit of hardship with these restrictions and there's no facility. But Masjid al-Aqsa al-Mubarak is such that out of Ramadan, you go there, the entire masjid is accessible for all the sisters. There's not a single place that they feel restricted. Oh, I'm not allowed to go there. Or I'm not allowed to visit. I can't do ziyarah there. But every inch of the masjid is accessible for them and they feel very, very comfortable walking around and seeing the masajid, seeing the different places, subhanallah. Inshallah, we'll stop here now and then we'll continue after the break, inshallah, and we'll talk about how to enter and what sort of restrictions that we have. This is your host, Molana Mahmud, on Radio Ramadan, Wolverhampton 87.8 FM.